Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat, and I'm a keynote speaker. And my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is an expression that means carpe diem, seize the opportunity, go after those things that you want. And of course, the thing that I wanted to do was watch Halt and Catch Fire and talk about it with people. So here I am doing a rewatch podcast. And today we are going to cover season 1, episode 5. It was called Adventure. And it originally aired June 29th, 2014. This one was directed by Ed Bianchi and it was written by Davi Waller. And the description is, in hopes of acquiring new LCD technology for their computer, Gordon must ask a favor of his stepfather. Actually, it's his father-in-law and his business connections. Meanwhile, Cameron has an unexpected encounter with Joe McMillan Sr. So I'm really excited to dive into this episode. But first, I just want to sort of go back in case you missed it. If you've only been listening and looking for these episode recaps, you may have missed that a few days ago, I actually dropped my very first interview. And I'm now very happy to say that it was with two guests. It was with Morgan Hinkleman, who played young Joni Clark, and Alana Kavanaugh, who played young Haley Clark. Those two, if you haven't gotten a chance to watch that yet, look, it's not spoiler free. It is in fact spoiler filled. So if you are new to the show, you might want to wait on that interview. But for those who are familiar with the show and who have seen all 4 seasons, they are magic together. I had such a blast interviewing them and like being part of a conversation where they got to reminisce about their childhood. They remember a surprising amount. I mean, if you asked me to do an interview about something that happened when I was 6 or 7 or 8 years old, I would not be able to give you a 50-minute interview. I will tell you that much. So they lit up the screens. They're so connected to each other. And I think you're really going to enjoy that one. And we've still got more interviews to come, but that was such a fun one to set us up. So I think what I'm going to try to do is, I want to stick to these Monday recap episodes. And if and when I have interviews to drop, I think I'll try to drop those on Thursdays. If the schedule changes at any point, I'll let you know, but I want to have some consistency here so you know what to expect. I'm doing my best with these interviews. I'll get, conversations with whoever I can get, and they may drop in a weird sequence. And, it's just all the more reason for us to rewatch and enjoy this show. So having said all that, let's talk about season 1, episode 5, which I've got to say, I continue to be amazed at season 1 because, so many people talk about it being a slow start to the show, but all of these episodes are giving us really important layers of these characters that are all going to bear fruit later in future seasons. And this episode for me is all about daddy issues. Like, most of the characters have this very specific thing in common where there's some sort of history with their father that doesn't influence them in a good way. And so, I think that's something that we'll really dive into in this episode for the first time. And then we are going to see that this evolves. What we know about the relationships with their fathers really evolves over time. Now, if we start with this scene by scene breakdown here, we are going to begin with a montage. And it's really a very Joe and Cam specific montage. We're going to be alternating between scenes of them. And it's set to a song called Capsize by Big Black Delta, which actually is from 2011. Anachronistic, but perfect tonally and lyrically. So I never noticed until I looked up the date that this song came out that this is actually, decades in the future that this song would have come out. But I do think that this is a perfect musical choice for this montage, partly because one of the first lines that we hear prominently in this song is, "You move forward, you move backwards, and together we make nothing at all." Okay, look, if you're new to the show, you might be beginning to see the relevance of that. If you're familiar with all 4 seasons of the show, that is correct. So, lyrically, it's accurate, but also tonally, it feels like a synthesized sort of Joe song. And I really like the choice. So we're going to be alternating here. So we're going to start with a scene of Joe. He is getting started for his day. He's in the shower. Cam, she's in bed. She's in a nice bed. It's 7:29 a.m. and then the alarm clock flips and it's time to get up. She hates the alarm. She turns it off, but she's not going to hate it for long. So Joe's still in the shower. We're cutting back to him, and then we're going to cut back to Cameron again. She's happy. She's going to go to the window, and it's this big window, clearly not somewhere she lives. And it's covered in the curtains are covering the window. So what I think is really interesting about this is that in this shot, they chose to, Cameron is in her underwear, and just like Joe would be. So we've had these moments where we see Joe wake up in the morning and he's in his underwear staring out the window of his apartment, this big window of his apartment with the blinds drawn or the shades drawn. And they're giving us something similar here with Cam, right? So like, are Cam and Joe sort of the same person? Is she modeling herself after him? What are we supposed to be gathering from this? But I thought it was really important. Now, I do think functionally, they could have also been making the choice to have the curtains drawn, or actually the curtains closed. They could have been making that choice out of contractual, like maybe Mackenzie Davis had regulations around how much of her you could see. We're still seeing her from behind, but maybe they didn't feel that was an important thing to show. But on the other hand, I do feel like there is something in the story for me to glean from the fact that she's doing something similar to Joe, but it's not all the way there yet. Like he'd be looking out the window and he's actually looking out the window. She's looking at the curtains, but looking at the window, not out the window. So, I think there's something about that. Like she's becoming him, but she's not there yet. Like there are some missing pieces to that. Now, she is feeling really happy about things. It makes you wonder where she is right now, because this doesn't look like a place she would live. Joe, we go back over to him. He's very gingerly putting on his pants. He was beaten to a pulp in the last episode. So he's recovering. He's feeling very sore. Putting on his outfit to start the day is a huge, painful project for him. Cam, meanwhile, is very enthusiastic. She's showered. She's shaking herself like a wet dog. She's the picture of youth and vim and vigor. And then she orders a room service. So we see somebody delivering a room service cart. She's in a hotel somewhere. Joe can't get his shoes on. It's too painful. He's trying. He's doing it in the most awkward way. We're gonna go back to Cam. She's ordering a taxi. And I really enjoy this piece. So she's ordering a taxi to have a meeting at Eaton Microtech Labs. And she's getting some sort of question on the phone. So she says, "No, I'm not from here. Can you get the guy with the French name on that?" "Yeah, Mr. Concierge." Cam has not had much opportunity to stay in hotels, right? So like, this is sort of like cute and adorable, but it's also very realistic. Like Cam, this is not, Cam even getting a job was a big shift for her. And now, she's being sent on, it seems like a work trip. So now we're going to go back over to Joe. And this is, I think, a really interesting moment. Joe is going to pick up the Wall Street Quarterly because the article came out for Cardiff Electric. Except, is it for Cardiff Electric? Because there's just a big headshot of Joe. Just like, it takes up a good percentage of the page. There's no pictures of any other people in the company. It's just Joe's face. Yep, he clearly orchestrated that. So, he's got a little smile that we see. He made it happen. He's in the Wall Street Quarterly. He's going to pick up his bat, the bat that we've seen before, the bat that had a message on it, and he's going to start swinging the bat. The first time he swings it, he's in a lot of pain, and he just can't get himself to do it. But he continues to do it, and he keeps working through the pain until he's able to fully swing the bat. And I feel like even from seeing that, we are going to clearly assert in this episode that his father gave him that bat, that his father tried to teach him how to use it and was very disappointed in Joe's abilities with the bat. And I feel like I can imagine little Joe Jr. swinging the bat, trying to play baseball, and his father's way of correcting him. And I don't think it sounds pretty or encouraging. I think it sounds basically like every single thing his father says in this episode about him. So there feels like a real punishment aspect of it, like the you must practice through pain feeling, pain that his father was inflicting on him when he was younger and he's feeling physically right now. It feels very dark to me, everything that we're learning about Joe's relationship with his dad. Now we're going to head over to the Clark household where Donna's currently making breakfast. She's making French toast. So we have, a French concierge. We've got French toast. We've got little things that thematically are linking together in this scene. Gordon's going to come in and he's going to shout, "It's alive." He's so excited because the Wall Street Journal Quarterly article just came out. And he is remarking to Donna that she was quoted multiple times. She's like, Susan Fairchild was quoted. And he just doesn't even address that. It's like, nope, too excited, not listening. But, she'll kind of get back at him here. She's currently making breakfast, but for her dad's birthday, because her dad is there. And so it's her mom. And Gordon's like, gasp. Oh my gosh. Gordon clearly has not been spending a lot of time at the house to know what the schedule is going to be. And so this takes him by surprise and probably shouldn't have. She's like, "I thought you came back specifically for this." He was like, "Nope. This was not a pleasant way to start his day." So Donna leans in really quickly. She's like, "I got my dad a putter from you to play golf." And, then Donna's dad is going to come in and, he's saying hello to Gordon. There's all this thank you for the putter business. And he's trying to see if Gordon will play golf with him. Gordon's like, "Another time. Thanks, but no." The morning breakfast is enough for me, he thinks. Gordon's going to go over to greet the girls, Joni and Haley, and they are currently preoccupied because they were given a gift from their grandpa. And it is a very tech-savvy tool. It is a wristwatch that's got a built-in TV. And so they're watching TV on this tiny little wristwatch screen. They're huddled over it together. And we get this bit of exposition that Donna's dad, who has a catalog business, has relationships with Japanese companies, and he just arranged a deal with Kazoku to put those in the catalog. And obviously an important piece of that for this episode is that the wristwatch has a screen, and the screen is how they're watching TV on it. So that'll become a pertinent detail for later, but a lot of things are going to need to tie together here. We're going to learn a lot about everybody's fathers in this episode, and you could make an argument like, okay, so Gordon has a not so loving relationship with his father-in-law. We don't really know about Gordon's dad here. We will get some information about his family in a future episode, but at this point, we don't know anything about Gordon's family. But what we do know is that he's got a relationship with Donna's dad, and it's not a good one. you can make an argument here. The only person who has anywhere near a healthy relationship with their parents or father is Donna with her parents, or Donna with her dad. But I don't know. Is that fully a healthy thing? I mean, they definitely judge her and she leans into that. And so I think sometimes it feels like support, but at the end of the day, when you're watching the show, do you feel like it's supportive to Donna or supportive to her relationships, or just trying to get her out of the situation that she's currently in? So those are some things that kind of struck me initially from how they set this up. And Donna's dad is going to shout "Happy birthday" to me, and Donna's mom is going to cheers, and she's going to whoop, and she's the only one doing it. Nobody else cares. So we're now going to we're going to start going to some office stuff. So we're going to get a faraway shot of John trying to pitch to a bunch of people in a room. And I suppose you could say that the faraway shot we're getting is more like Joe's perspective on the situation, because Joe is hanging way back in the room. I get a sense that he was told before this meeting, I run this meeting. Don't you step in, Joe. You're just here. Boz is trying to reassert his leadership in the office. He's trying to make it very clear who runs things around here. And we didn't see this scene, but I certainly imagine that he was told to let Boz run the meeting. So the problem with that is that the people in the room have very technical questions that Boz does not have the answer to at all. And we know Joe's been practicing his lingo. Sometimes it's not quite right, as we found out in the prior episode, but he has been practicing, and I guess Boz hasn't been. So when these people in the room are hammering Boz with questions, how is this different from the XT? John has to joke his way through it. Boz has to just joke and inappropriately joke his way through it, which only holds up so far. He makes a off-color joke, and initially he's like, well, it has all the same features, but if you haul it down to the no-tell motel, you can screw your secretary and still get memos typed up. I don't even know what that means. It's like a distraction technique, and I think it's read that way in the room. It's a joke, and he's trying to get people to laugh their way through not even getting an answer. Because at the end of the day, Boz knows that they've got a spec sheet in front of them. They've got like a booklet of information about this product they're trying to sell, and he's trying to get them just to look at the book because he doesn't have the technical information. But his sort of joking it off answer wasn't enough, and these guys are saying, well, like, tell us about the speed. They're asking him really detailed questions. Boz looks over at Joe, and Joe's just like, I'm just a carpetbagger from New York. They won't listen to me, which feels as though that is the exact thing he was told when he was told to stay quiet in the room. Boz is saying, the specs are in the packet we gave to you. It's not really a good sales move to do that. They're looking for information out of the horse's mouth. So Joe's going to jump in. He's going to address Boz's joke, and then he's going to move into the sales pitch. So he's like, well, you know what? The secretary Boz mentioned is not included in the price we discussed. But here's the deal. Here for the specs, we did experiment with the 286, the thing that you just asked about, but we found out it was going to cost a lot, way too much for your customers. So we're going with a different thing. It's going to be faster than any IBM compatible or any IBM PC on the market. In fact, it's going to be almost 2 times as fast. He's just throwing in jargon at them. At this point, it almost sounds like he understands it. He's been trying to beef up his language, and it seems to be passable in this room. Would it be passable with the engineers at this point? I don't know. It wasn't in the last episode. Maybe he's improved. But then he's going to go full sales mode. He's going to say, let's get to the real question here. You've been tasked with finding out what's going to go on the 3rd shelf, right, of your displays. IBM PC is going to go on the top shelf. 2nd shelf is for your new brand name computer. And then the 3rd shelf is for whatever else, right? And your stock folks are going to hate, they usually hate having to lug really heavy computers, put them on those low shelves. And, this could be your solution for that. But actually, I want you to switch your mindset on this, because this It's not an IBM compatible clone. This is the new compatible. IBM's going to have to clone us. This should be on your first shelf. This should bump IBM. And next year, if you make a decision like that, it's going to work out so well for you. You'll be the new CEOs asking what's going to go on your third shelf. And these guys, they are sold. They're asking questions, they're raising hands, they're very engaged in the conversation, where Boz unfortunately did not have them feeling very engaged before. So Cam is going to show up back at the office. So we're going to find out where Cam had been as we get into this scene. She shows up and her smile fades from her face because there's a lot of people in the office she doesn't recognize. So Joe's going to come over, welcome her back from her trip. She's like, right. Who are all these people? And he says, well, it's our new team of software engineers. He then introduces Steve, the new software development manager. And she's like, wasn't I the Steve? Like, how did this happen? She comes back. She thought she was all of these people, and now there are all these people here. So she's been demoted pretty much. Like, she did her job. She's no longer running the show. And then, Steve comes over, says hello, immediately doesn't like that Cam's a girl. He's just not interested in Cam. He doesn't want to be challenged. He's a guy who wants to protect his job. Joe's going to send him away. And Cam's going to fight for this. She's like, I can do the software design myself. I already started on the plane. And Joe says, we need people to help with this. And she says, hey, hold on a minute. So did you just specifically send me to Cincinnati, which is the work trip she just did? Did you just send me there so that you could just hire all these people while I wasn't here to notice? She was like, you're being paranoid. Stop with that. Like, you needed the rest. That's why you went on the trip. And it just so happens that no, that's exactly what happened. Like, I think her radar being up here, she detected the right thing. Joe absolutely sent her away so that she wouldn't squeak while he was trying to hire all these new people. We're going to go over to the kill room. And Gordon's asking the guys, have you thought of a name for... Now, what are they trying to think of a name for? Is this for the chip itself? Is this for the BIOS? I don't know. I think it's for the BIOS. So they're coming up with names like Alamo, Death Star, George, Khan. Cam overhears this. She's like, guys, I wrote the BIOS. Stop pushing me out of this. Like, I name it. I wrote it. It's going to be called Lovelace. And a couple of the guys giggle. She's like, not Linda Lovelace, Ada Lovelace, the first computer programmer, who is a woman and somebody that she obviously idolizes. And we're going to hear this name again in this episode because for a woman programmer of her time, that would be the person that you want to emulate. So they test out the program and it works. They toast with champagne. Joe's going to come in and Joe's kind of just like a wet blanket on every celebration in the kill room. It's like they're thinking they get to celebrate something they worked really hard to do. Everybody's congratulating Gordon on leading the team. And then Joe comes in, he's like, nope. In this case, Joe's complaint is, why are you celebrating? The screen didn't even turn on. They're like, there is no screen yet. Okay. Joe's been trying to sell a thing. He's been talking to people about having a computer that's going to fit in a briefcase. And it's going to be, and there's no screen even yet. And he knows that. And, Joe just made all these promises, but Gordon's saying, yeah, you overpromised. It's really great that you get to sit in front of people and say words, but because you don't actually work with the machinery, you have no idea. You have no idea what this all entails. Joe says, yeah, and none of you sold any computers before I got here. So what? There's this tension between them, and I think there's a lack of respect that's reared its ugly head again in this episode. Maybe it was always there and they've never resolved it, but they definitely both feel that they're doing something more important than what the other one is doing. Certainly not a team yet, right? There have been moments that it felt like it might be heading in that direction, but no, In this episode, we see very clearly that they both feel like they're battling for control, and they're battling for the respect of the people in the kill room as well. And after all this, Joe leaves, and then the thing they're testing starts to smoke, so they have to turn it off. And one step forward, a couple steps back, like the song was saying. So, okay, we're gonna go over to Donna's office. Donna, it's been tough for Donna at the office because she's sometimes doing work in other people's offices, and that is making her work at this office suffer. So TI, needs her attention. Hunt, he's a little angry at a report she submitted because it's not the report he asked for. She's like, it's under so the report is underneath the one that you're looking at right now. He's like, well, make sure it's on top. Okay. So he's pretty annoyed. And she's on probation. Remember that. Like she's very at risk at this job right now. And so she needs to be doing things like putting the correct report on top. All right, so we go back to the kill room where we have Ed, who is one of the engineers, who is currently throwing darts at the ad for the Cardiff PC. And I'm really enjoying this ad, which I never stopped the screen before to look at it closely, but the slogan is "Going to work just became work to go." And there's a guy on a plane who's got the IBM PC open on the tray table. So it looks like it's sitting in a briefcase. You can get a sense of the size and the weight of it by seeing that the tray table can support it. And the guy looks a little bit like Joe. Everything here is about Joe. So, Ed's throwing darts on it. He's not the first person who's done so. There's a lot of dart holes in this piece of paper. Okay, so they're brainstorming as engineers would do because they need to make this thing lighter. So what can go? Do you get rid of this and that affects the ability to get rid of the heat? Do you do this? They're trying to figure out how do we make this thing 10 pounds lighter? And these guys don't think they can make this thing 10 pounds lighter. But Gordon's saying, we have to get this right. We have to do it. And these guys are not focused. Larry's in the middle of watching a game. Gordon's feeling frustrated. We have a job to do. But then he looks at his wristwatch and he remembers the game, not a toy, the wristwatch that Joni and Haley were looking at earlier in the day, the one that had the TV on it on the screen. And he's like, oh, and he starts putting the pieces together and he says, what if we swapped out the CRT for a lighter and a smaller LCD screen? And the guys are like, yeah, that's a nice idea. It's expensive. Gordon says, I might know a guy. Okay, so now we're seeing the pieces come together here in this storyline. Kim is going to go over to her workstation. She's in the middle of the open office plan with all the cubicles. And remember, she had her own little spot she appropriated for herself in the storage room where she could blast music and make it a total pigsty and make a comfortable workspace for herself. And now she has to be in the middle of an open plan office run by Steve, who's trying to keep things orderly and tidy. This does not feel like a person who's going to thrive in that atmosphere. She's got her name on her station and she sits over there, and we're going to see two new characters. We're going to meet Lev and Yo-Yo. Lev is actually going to introduce us to Yo-Yo. They're a couple of programmers. And he's going to introduce himself. He's going to introduce Kenneth, who we're now to know as Yo-Yo, and he gives us a little yo-yo trick to just solidify that detail. And Cam's first order of business is she's going to load the game Adventure onto a computer. More on that in a minute. Steve sees what she's doing. He's like, so I assigned you to write print drivers, not to play games. She's like, what? You did what? Lev is observing. He's just quietly observing this whole thing. Every time we're going to see Cam and Steve in the middle of the office having some sort of an argument, there's always some ears perked up, always people listening to them. And so Lev is observing it. Cameron's like, you assigned me to do what now? Steve says, check the flow chart. And there's this giant whiteboard with everybody's names, all the tasks, check marks, dates, a nice little Gantt chart that he's created for everybody. And he's pointing to that. He's like, okay, so go check the flow chart. I've mapped out all the subroutine assignments. Cam's like, right, except writing print drivers is remedial work. Why aren't I working on a compiler? Look, I don't know what those things are, but I understand Cam's point that he's severely underutilizing her skill set. And she was already not inclined to, believe him. So now that she's been tasked to something that has absolutely no authority, no ability to really influence design or, in her opinion, do anything that she felt was meaningful for the skills that she had. Steve is like, well, compilers, that's already been assigned. There's already people working on that. That's number one. Number two, I hear you can't be trusted to document your code. So that's one of the reasons you weren't assigned to an important project like that. And number three, start documenting your code. Steve is doing everything he can to just put her straight in her place. This is not a manager who wants to build a good relationship with people. He wants to rule through authority and fear. That's Steve. We all know Steve, right? So, okay. So Lev, Steve's going to walk away. Lev's like, welcome to the short bus. And Yo-Yo is hearing what Cam is doing in the background. He's like, is that adventure? I know that game just by listening to your keystrokes. He's like, the game is like heroin. That's addictive. That took out my entire grad seminar the night before the final. We all failed because we were playing adventure. Aha. I think that's what Cam is aiming for. I have a question for you all here. So Yo-Yo is drinking or eating, I think drinking something out of a can. The can is labeled snack time. This is probably not a real brand. I don't know. Maybe it was a real brand. Who knows? It sounds like when he turns the thing upside down, it sounds like something is rolling down the can. It sounds like it's either extremely carbonated or it's something like Pop Rocks, or it makes a lot of noise. What is this product? Does anybody have any idea what this product is? Is it something he's eating or something he's drinking? It seems like something in a can that he's drinking, but boy, is it loud. Sound design, is that accurate or is that an exaggeration of what this product might have been? I imagine there was something probably like this. So Kim is going to warn Yo-Yo. She's like, well, get ready because I'm putting this thing up on the mainframe. And Yo-Yo's going to smile. I think Yo-Yo already likes Cam, to be quite honest with you. Okay, we're going to go to the golf course. Gordon is now playing golf with his dad with his father-in-law because, maybe Gordon wants to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. No, not really. This guy, first of all, Gordon's father-in-law clearly detests Gordon and makes every possible dig at him he can. And he always does it in a way that's not definitely for sure a dig, but it is. So he says, oh, we picked a great day. The golf course isn't crowded, so you won't be able to slow down anybody's game. Oh, it's like, for some people that could be said with reassurance, like, hey, I know you're feeling worried about that, and let me reassure you it's not an issue. Nope, he's just digging at Gordon here. Clearly this happens all the time. The fathers we meet, the father-in-laws we meet in this episode are universally going to have this skill honed. They are really good at putting down their children or sons-in-law and making it seem like it's a compliment, but it is not. I know your game, fathers. Okay, so Gordon is going to let that one slide. He's going to thank his father-in-law for the gift for his kids. And then Gordon's going to pivot a little and he's going to say, hey, so it sounds like you have a good relationship with those guys at Kuzoku, huh? And both of them look at each other and instantly know this just turned into a sales conversation. They are now doing business on the golf course. So Gordon just needs an intro. He just needs an LCD screen. And, Donna's father is very wary of this. He's like, look, the last time you came to me for help, I'm not going to let Donna go through that again, basically referencing the symphonic. Gordon says, no, this is completely different, totally different. Joe is on the project. It's not just me. And Donna's dad says, oh, Joe McMillan, the one that Donna says is all hat and no cattle. So Gordon's going to continue to pitch as hard as he possibly can. And, he does convince Donna's dad to make the connection for them. And Donna's dad is like, well, I have a good relationship with them. So do me right here. And you need a face-to-face meeting. They only do business face-to-face. So Gordon is going to thank him again, completely interrupting his concentration, and it annoys his father-in-law. Okay, so now we're going to go over to the office. Debbie is in the middle of, Joe's returning. Debbie's in the middle of catching him up on any messages. She's like, okay, first of all, here are the directions for the Big Star Ball and a message from your father as well. Joe's like, with the what? You just slipped that one in there. She says, your dad has a layover in Dallas on Thursday on his way to Hong Kong. Joe kind of little storm cloud starts to form over Joe's head. He takes the message, he keeps walking, and then when he gets into his office, he's going to call back to Debbie and he's going to say, what hotel is he staying at again? We find out it's going to be the Carrington Hotel, and Joe says, all right, tell him I'm going to meet him at the bar at the Carrington Hotel at 1:00 that day. And then we're going to see Joe go to the Carrington Hotel. And instead of entering, like he's standing outside, he goes over to the window, he looks inside, and he sees his dad waiting for him and looking at his watch. Because what is it with fathers and watches around here? And Joe chickens out. He's just not interested. He leaves. He doesn't even make eye contact with his father. So now we're going to go back to the office where Joe is chastising Gordon for having arranged a vendor meeting. He actually doesn't know anything about how Gordon got this meeting. He's just annoyed because, there's that tricky balance of power between Joe and Boz, but there's also the tricky balance of power between Joe and Gordon right now. And Joe wants to be dominant in both of those relationships. So Joe wants Gordon to cancel this. Gordon is like, nope, can't be done. Can't cancel it. But Joe now starts thinking about the screen, about the Kazoku screen that they've been building. And he's like, LCD, how did you even get this? Gordon has a connection, a mysterious connection. And Gordon says, well, I'm meeting them on sushi. I'm meeting them at sushi on McKinney. And Joe Joe's just sort of shaking his head. And he's like, well, first of all, okay, I see your point. Like IBM doesn't even make their products with an LCD screen. So, okay, the wheels are turning here a little bit. He's slowly co-signing this plan, but he's like, change your reservation. The Japanese don't want to come to Texas to eat sushi. They want to go to get steak. Let's take them to Woodson's. And then Joe's going to compliment Gordon. He's going to say, nice work. It's going to be short-lived, but hey, for a moment, that's lovely. Okay, so we're going to go back to the open office area. Yo-Yo is just kind of hovering over Cam, which Cam would normally hate. But Cam is smiling at Yo-Yo's work. Yo-Yo has put some effort in here. He's been documenting her code. He's been basically doing her job. And she thinks his comments are really funny. Plus, he's put all these cute little bells and whistles on it. He added a graphics mode. He added auto grayscale conversion. He goes to the printer and he prints out. She hits print and it's a smiley face. It's a huge smiley face. Cam is loving it. And let's be really clear. I believe that Yo-Yo feels love at first sight for Cam. He has such a crush on her from the instant he lays eyes on her. He's just doing stuff here that He's doing her job. He's putting all these extras on it. He's just doing whatever he can to make her smile. He's going above and beyond. This is more than your basic colleague stuff. I doubt that he's going to these levels for Lev. So, I mean, Yo-Yo loves Cam. I don't know. I mean, he just met her, but whatever. I think it's there. I think it's a crush. Yo-Yo is now going to, after doing all these lovely things, he's like, a bunch of us are going to this KCYD car thing, and dinner if you're interested. It's a group sort of a date thing, I think, for Yo-Yo, right? I mean, look, I never really, before this rewatch, I never really thought about this. But before I started this rewatch, I was like, I think Yo-Yo has a crush on Cam. And it's bearing out, folks. And I'm loving it. Okay. So Cam's like, I don't know, maybe. But Steve's gonna come over because he needs to just ruin everything. And Cam's done with her work, which is great. But did she check her name off next to that task on the flow chart? She's like, no, I didn't, because I just came over and told you that I'm done. And Steve's like, that's not how we do it around here. We have flow charts on whiteboards and we check our name off. It's protocol. And he says, this might have been his next big mistake. He's like, I learned it at Stanford B School. Cam could not care less about Stanford B School. That, I think he thinks, is like asserting his dominance. And her response is, does the B stand for bullshit? Once again, every confrontation that Steve and Cam have with each other, they are not the only ones listening to this. All the people in the office are like, their ears are perked up. So when Cam says this to Steve, there's one guy visibly who's just like nodding to everybody else to start listening. Like, guys, check out what's happening here with Cam and Steve. So Steve says, well, feel free to come by my office to discuss this like adults. And then he just puts his little dig in there because he doesn't want to be working with Cam. He's like, no need to get your panties in a wad. And Cam just keeps it flat and even, doesn't get out of control with her emotions here, but she does say, oh, I'm not wearing any panties, but you can stick that in your flow chart. And the one guy who was nodding to everybody to listen, he starts cracking up, but quietly, in a way that Steve wouldn't know he's cracking up. I mean, just by that one guy, like, you can sort of see, probably a lot of people feel the way that Cam feels about Steve, and nobody's challenging Steve. And Cam is sort of speaking on all of their behalves. So Cam is now going to storm into Joe's office. She would like to get rid of Steve. He's a terrible manager. Joe is like, maybe you just need to learn to work with people and managers. I mean, you did in fact just like start being in the workforce. She's coming at him with something practical. She said, he's assigning drivers to the fastest coders and compilers to the lunkheads. It's inefficient. He's not being a good manager. Joe's like, well, cut him some slack. He's got a lot of pressure. Cam says, I could handle the pressure myself. Joe says, listen, let me give you a point for point reason why you can't do this job, just like Steve was trying to do. A, you're not a people person. B, you have no management or even really any job experience. C, you dropped out of college. Cam jumps in. She's like, you begged me, asshole. And he's like, and D, you lack professionalism. A manager doesn't swear at her superiors, certainly not with the office door open. So she's going to make it a point to go over and close the office door so she can continue to swear at him more professionally. I love that detail. Just like, I will do half of what you said and that will make me more professional. He shouldn't have qualified it. So Joe's going to say, you're not entitled to special treatment because of the thing we have going on. And when he says this, there's a darkness about Joe that makes me feel like he's channeling his dad. Like, Joe worked for his dad at IBM, and I'm guessing that at some point or other, he had the conversation with his dad. I am not giving you special treatment here just because you are my son. In fact, I bet he probably was harder on Joe than he was on others on the team because Joe was his son. So I, I got the sense that this was a direct channeling of his father sort of moment in the way he spoke to her just then. Not something that she would have picked up on, but something that because his father is actually placed in this episode so prominently, it's hard not to feel like there's influence coming through. So Cam's going to walk over. She's going to reach behind him in a sort of seductive way. She's going to reach into his pockets. She's going to take his keys. She's going to say, great, well, I'm going to stop doing that thing with you. I'm taking that off the table and that'll maybe wake you up. She grabs his keys and then she says, well, I left some stuff at your apartment. I'm going to go get that. I'm going to leave the office. You can tell Steve I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, so Cam just does not want to be controlled. Does not want to be controlled in the way everybody's trying to control her. She wants to be valued. And frankly, she left college for, you know, being a very integral part of a team, and she no longer is being considered an integral part of the team. So this is like a bait and switch. Yeah, she actually got that role for a short amount of time, but she has been aggressively demoted here. And she's being slapped down in as many ways as she possibly can. We're going to head over to Woodson's. And this is where we're going to be having the dinner with the Japanese salesman from Kuzoku. Okay, we're over at Woodson's and Gordon is in the middle of telling Joe about all the cultural protocol that he should be observing with Japanese businessmen because they haven't showed up yet. And Joe just looks at him. He's like, I've been to Tokyo 9 times. Gordon doesn't need to tell Joe how to do his job. Joe needs to tell Gordon how to do his job. So the gentlemen arrive from Japan, and I really like this camera angle that they chose here because, you know, from floor level, it's just a room with a bunch of extras in it, right? It's some sort of obscure restaurant, but they changed the camera angle when we have the introduction, that first handshake meeting between these two representatives of Kuzoku and Joe and Gordon. And we go to it's not exactly overhead, but it's overhead and diagonally pointed down, looking through chandeliers. And I like the choice to have the chandeliers there because it gives me more of a sense of place, of the quality of the restaurant. You know, this is a place for a nice business meeting. You know, so they're trying to put on a nice front, a nice show, and, you know, impress these two from Kuzoku. So Joe knows his protocol better than Gordon does. He shows a lot of respect to the two gentlemen from Kuzoku. The folks from Kuzoku think Joe is Gary Emerson's son-in-law, and now Joe knows how Gordon got this meeting. He did not have that information before. Gordon is going to correct them and say, I'm actually Gary's son-in-law. And so now we have all the context. Everybody at this meeting knows the context. Cam, meanwhile, is going to show up at Joe's apartment. His dad is inside. She's not expecting to see a different man or anybody in Joe's apartment right now. Joe's dad introduces himself as Joe McMillan. She's like, I know Joe McMillan. And he's like, senior. Joe McMillan's senior. This absolutely seems like a guy who would give his son the same name that he has. So she is like, okay, fair, but how did you get in here? He says, well, I showed the super my license. You say something with the right authority, you generally get what you want. Cam's like, fascinating. I'm just here to get my stuff. And so she goes, she's not really interested in interacting with Joe's dad at all. So she starts getting her things. Joe's dad he's holding up the bat that he gifted to Joe. And he says, yeah, I got this bat for Joe. I spent hours teaching him to swing it correctly. He wasn't exactly a natural. He's going to use this phrasing twice in close succession. So he wasn't exactly a natural. Then he says, I didn't know Joe had a girlfriend. Cam says, I'm not his girlfriend. Dad says, Joe's not exactly the girlfriend type. Not exactly is Joe's dad's way of insulting Joe and saying the most deeply personal things about him. In this case, what does he think Joe's gay? Does he think Joe's bi? He's not exactly the girlfriend type. Okay, Joe McMillan Sr. So the dad says, what did he do to make you mad? Cam's like, what did he do to make you mad? His dad says, oh, is that what he's told you? Cam says, he said nothing about you. Doesn't want to talk about you ever. So, but having said that, you did have to lie to get in here. You had to lie to a super to get in here. So clearly you guys are not on good terms. And his dad smiles. He says, touche. And the smile reminded me of the smile at the end of, was that episode 3 or 2, where he's telling the story about Sputnik to get Gordon and Cam to come back to the office the next day. And Gordon believes it, and Cam sees right through it. When she shows up in the office the next day, she calls Joe out on it. And Joe's like, is that so? I got my years wrong with the big game and Sputnik. And it was exactly the same thing. The way Joe's dad reacted here with Cam was like, so you got me. Whatever. Doesn't change anything. So Joe's dad says, he stood me up today. Let's have a drink. Let's commiserate over not liking Joe. Cam declines. Thanks, but no. That doesn't feel like a thing I want to do. It was lovely to meet you, though. The dad finds out that her name is Cameron Howe, because in this moment she does introduce herself as Cameron. He says, Cameron Howe? You mean the Cameron Howe? Like when my guys came back from New York after trying to recruit you, they couldn't stop talking about the prodigy Cameron Howe, that Cameron Howe. She's like, uh-huh. She is not buying it. You can see that she's not buying it. Then Joe's father says, I said you're the modern Ada Lovelace. Okay, that at least gets a drink. I don't know that she's buying it, but if you're going to call her Ada Lovelace, all right, fine. I think once again, she's always attracted to Joe in the moments where she knows he's lying or she knows he's kind of dangerous to her. And it's the same thing that's happening here. She's not attracted to Joe's dad, but I think that, she's going to sit down, she's going to have this drink because, all right, she knows what he's doing. He's calling her Ada Lovelace, but fine, call me Ada Lovelace all you want. So that's going to get him a little time with her. So, he takes it a step further and he's saying, I'm going to have a flight to Hong Kong tomorrow with Bill Gates and I just want to get a little liquid courage for it. Hate to drink alone. So she agrees. Now we're going to go over to Woodson's again, where somebody else is drinking. We've got Joe pouring drinks for people. Gordon is checking his wristwatch, the weather on his wristwatch, and he's complimenting the Kozoku guys for it. And he really doesn't understand the cultural protocol. You might argue he doesn't understand it for even an American business setting, but he definitely doesn't understand it for a business meeting with 2 folks from Japan. So he actually physically touches the Japanese engineer on the shoulder. And you can see the engineer stunned that he did that, taken aback, not liking it. And Gordon does not clock that. So he's unfortunately going to do it more than once in this episode. And so he's going to touch him on the shoulder. He's going to start asking technical questions, and like a lot of technical questions. And the salespeople are observing this. Joe and the Japanese salesperson are both observing this interaction. And Gordon is sort of talking up the price as he's admiring some of the features of their screens. And so the Japanese salesperson comes in and says, "What you're saying, the things that you're asking about, that's going to drive up the price." I think that he says that because he doesn't actually want to go down the road that Gordon's going down. And it's almost like a look between Joe and that Japanese salesperson where they're like, can we just end this thing that's happening between the engineers? And so he says that'll drive up the price. So Joe takes over in this moment, and he's going to say very coldly, "We can't drive up the price till we're no longer competitive. Here's our offer." And he lays an offer out for the folks from Kuzoku. This time, Gordon knows to keep his mouth shut, as he was warned in an earlier episode. And they sit, even though there's an awkward moment of silence on that for a minute. And then the Japanese say kanpai, and they drink to the deal. They drink, it might, I don't know, it was that sake? I don't know. Gordon doesn't like the taste of it. And that is the first of probably many drinks they're going to have. So we are now going to go over to the office at night, the open plan office. It's totally dark, but this time there's a lot of people in it. And I kind of like that because, you know, we've seen the office dark at night, and we've seen Cameron in it alone, spinning circles around it and enjoying the space. But now there's a whole team of people. This time they're playing the game that Cameron loaded onto the mainframe. So everybody is playing adventure. I will say that when I watched this episode, I was inspired to find Colossal Cave Adventure, or a version of it. I think it actually might have been like that version of the game, because it was not, there were no additional bells and whistles on it. And I experienced some of the things that they're talking about in this episode. So there's this whole section where you can get absolutely lost in a maze of twisty little passages, or get lost in a twisty little passages maze, or get lost in a maze of many twisting passages. They keep giving you these prompts that are like, you can't get out. And so it's the person who is reflecting on being lost in that maze, been there. Somebody says, try dropping an item. If you actually listen to what people are saying in this episode, you get some clues. Yo-Yo experienced having a pirate pounce on him and stealing his treasure. Lev yells at the screen, "No, you shut up. You have bad grammar," because, you know, sometimes the coders on the game Adventure just have enough of you as a game player. Boz is going to come in angry because he lives at the office, right? And so he's been playing just like everybody else, but he's been playing alone in his room. And he's going to point to Yo-Yo. He's like, "You, get in my office." Yo-Yo's like, "Me?" Boz is like, "You, no, anybody, any of you, all of you, come in to my office right now." And he brings them all in, and he's like, how the hell do I get out of this godforsaken cave? And they all laugh because Boz is having a very shared experience with the entire team. It's actually a really good moment of bonding for Boz with them. And Boz, I get it. I also got lost in the godforsaken cave. Okay. It's real. It's painful. Now that I've tried to play it, I get it. Okay, so we're going to go back to the dinner at Woodson's. We're going to go to a scene at the men's bathroom, which is a problem because Gordon should not be trying to do business with the folks from Kuzoku in the men's bathroom. One of them is literally at the urinal. Gordon, who is drunk, comes over, touches the same guy on the shoulder who hated it the first time while he is at the urinal. Look, I don't know what protocol is, but this feels like it can't be it for anybody, like in any country, anywhere. Gordon's going to start complaining about, you know, the sales guys not really knowing what the engineers do. And then he's like, you know, Take my father-in-law, for example. Have you ever actually looked through the Razor's Edge, the catalog? I mean, it's just full of schlock. You know what schlock is? The guy's looking at him, his eyes go wide, he washes his hand, he leaves, and Gordon just continues to say schlock under his breath. And I love it so much. Schlock, schlock, schlock. What a lovely touch. He's all the way drunk, and it's not a good look. What he just did in this bathroom just undermined the entire rest of the dinner they had. So we're going to go back to Cam and Joe's dad. They're drinking in Joe's apartment. What a violation, by the way. I mean, just if you're Joe and you know that this is happening, ouch, right? So Joe's dad points out the Air Force pin on her backpack. He's like, is that your dad's? Was he in Vietnam? She's like, yeah, he was a helicopter crew chief. Joe's dad says, oh, I was a naval officer in the Pacific. Cam says, when did you start with IBM? Joe's dad says, they recruited me in 1945 to work on Mark I. She's like, with Grace Hopper, another one of her idols. You met her? She's fascinated. This is where Joe's dad thinks he has Cameron. And so he makes a mistake and he says, yeah, I mean, I got to work with her. And, I knew that I wanted to work for Big Blue when I got out of, the Navy, and it's the best company in the world. You can already see Cam sees that he's shifting into sales mode. She takes her drink. She puts it down. She's done with the drinks with Joe's dad. And then dad says, I still don't know what possessed Joe to leave. Cameron bites her lip, like her whole mouth. She says no words. Joe's dad doesn't notice the shift of her energy. And he's like, I was surprised you turned us down when you turned us down. You could have been the next Grace Hopper, because, that worked so well the first time. But instead, you're in line to be just another programmer nobody remembers. And Cam's like, yeah, right. I see what you're saying. That was my mistake, because instead of writing the software for a brand new machine, I could have been getting coffee for the guy who warms the seat for the guy who writes the software. And Joe's dad's like, yeah, he might have made an error here. He's going to apologize. Like, he's just angry at Joe. It's tricky. It's a tricky thing with fathers and sons. I was like, I bet you would never stand your dad up if he came to see you. And she has a reaction to that. And he says, oh, your dad didn't make it. Oh, you must have been young. Oh, you must have been 10. Oh, I feel like Joe's dad did all the research on Cam. I feel like he knew exactly all of these beats about Cam, and he's been steering this conversation. And he thinks that by bringing up Cam's dad and Cam's dad's death, that he's going to be able to create an ally in this situation. Cam's going to leave here. She's going to take a moment to collect herself in another room. And Joe's dad smiles. He intended all of this. This was part of his design. And it makes you understand how in our pilot episode, Joe could come in and just orchestrate things to the extent that he did for Cardiff Electric. It makes you understand how Joe could have targeted Gordon and found a way to get exactly what he needed from Gordon. And it seems like Joe's dad is doing the same thing right now from Cam. So we're going to cut over to Joe and Gordon post dinner with the Kazoku folks. They're at their respective cars and Joe is yelling at Gordon. Joe's like, they picked up the check. That is the Japanese signal for we are not doing business for you. They are done. I never should have let you come to this meeting with me. Gordon's like, I set this meeting. I got this meeting. Let you come to the dinner with me. I arranged it, Joe. Joe says, well, actually, no. Your father-in-law arranged it and you insulted him. And, honestly, when it comes to doing business, you have no idea what you're doing. Gordon tries to attack him. He's like, well, you're screwing cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Is that still a commercial for Cocoa Puffs? Because that was absolutely something I remember from when I was younger. Joe says, you know what? I'm going to fix this in the morning. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix your mistake. Gordon's like, with what, your words? It's just like my father-in-law said, you're all hat and no cattle. Joe's going to hurt him right back. And he's going to say, well, why don't you go build a computer with Donna? Oh, wait, you already tried that. So these two are so not on the same page. They're definitely not a team. And unfortunately, they now they know a little bit about what buttons to push for each other. This is not heading in a good direction. Joe's going to screech away in his car. Gordon's going to slam his car door. So that is where we leave them for the moment. Now we're going to go back to the Clark household. Donna has a couple pies in the oven. She's looking at those. And she seems to be working on like a new pie crust that she's making. And she's on the phone with Gordon, and Gordon says, your dad's going to kill me. It was really, really bad what I did. And Donna just honestly doesn't want to hear it. She wants off of the phone. So she's like, you know what? I'm sure it's going to work out. She takes the timer, the kitchen timer, she sets it, makes it go off, and puts it right next to the phone. She's like, oh, pies are ready. Gotta go. This is a woman who doesn't want to be talking to her husband anymore right now. So Gordon's gonna sigh at the phone booth, and then Donna takes a taste of her pie crust mixture, and the phone's gonna ring again. She's gonna assume it's Gordon calling back, but nope, it's Hunt. It's her boss. It's her boss, huh? Hunt is calling, and it's an interesting shot we see. We're gonna see Hunt from sort of the side behind him, and we're gonna see him holding up like this, the phone, with his wedding ring. So specifically, we've got his wedding ring, and he's holding the phone. We're going to see him from a like behind side almost profile. And so he's like, you know what? I looked at your supplemental report. It was awesome. I love that you took that initiative. I just wanted to say thank you for that. Donna is very touched that she, like, you noticed me. Somebody is noticing great things that I do. How wonderful. I mean, her husband, she did all this work last episode to save her husband's business and project, and she's getting quoted by a name that isn't even her. She's anonymous on the project. So for Hunt to be calling her, to compliment her, to notice her, to thank her is a really big deal for Donna. And so Donna's going to blink a little bit. She's going to say thank you. He's going to apologize for getting upset. He's just, he's got a lot of pressure from the higher ups. We're going to get a little banter between them. And then she's going to say that she's in the middle of making some peach pie, and he loves peach pie. And then he asks her, do you put vodka in the crust like my grandma used to do? Because, she had this whole technique around vodka in the crust. I was like, oh, that's interesting. He asks her to save him a piece. A little bit of banter here. It's kind of interesting. Where's this headed? But the second they get off the phone, Donna's going to go find some vodka because she's going to try adding that to the crust. So now we're going to go follow Gordon. He has gone to Donna's parents' house because he needs to fess up. He needs to go have a conversation with his father-in-law. He interrupts them in the middle of game night. Donna's mom answers the door. Donna's mom gets the father, and she warns, Donna's mom warns Donna's dad, Gordon's been drinking. And so Donna's dad is like, what's up? And we don't see the apology, but we see the moment just before the apology. I love where this was cut. You see all the awkwardness. You see all of the, I can't believe I have to have this conversation with my father-in-law right now. He would just rather be anywhere in the whole world than do this, but he needs this. He's putting business first, and he's putting his, he's going to He's going to put his pride away and he's going to fess up and he's going to say what he did and he's going to ask for help. And also he needs to do it because this is something that may affect his father-in-law's business relationship as well. But we cut it there. We're going to go back to Cam. She's sitting alone in Joe's apartment in a separate room from Joe's dad. And she has a moment of realization. And I like that they keep this a mystery for just a moment for us. Like, what realization did she have here? She's going to go back into the room with Joe's dad. She's going to say, you know, Joe's been all wrong about you. And Joe's dad says, well, he's wrong about a lot of things. He smiles a little bit and he thinks he's got Cam. So he says, so how close is Joe to giving up on all of this? Cam says, well, I don't know. He's determined. He just hired a bunch of programmers and a manager, and he did it all behind my back. It really pissed me off. Joe's dad says, yeah, that sounds just like Joe. Cam said, he pulled this at IBM too. Joe's dad says, yep. He took his promotions. He would lie to his supervisor. One time he lied to a supervisor and warned him that he was about to be let go. So he said, you should tender your resignation just to maintain your dignity. And the guy did it. Cam looks at him. She's now gathered all the information she feels like she needs from the conversation. And she goes ice cold. And she says, well, if you say something with the right authority, you generally get what you want. And she gives Joe's dad a knowing look. You know, when she had re-entered the room, she had like she feigned vulnerability and like tenderness, like she was a little bit wounded from the conversation about her dad coming up. And then in this moment, she goes ice cold. She says this thing and she gives Joe's dad a look like, I've got you. And she says, you're so full of shit. You think that you're just going to get me, like I'm going to cave and you're just going to get me to tell Joe what a great guy you are. You're both disgusting. Joe's dad realizes he's been caught and he says, look, you don't understand who you've gotten into bed with. It's just a matter of time before he blows everything up. Cam says, well, you would know. Joe's dad says, look, I gave him the world. He spat in my face. He thinks everything belongs to him, including you. He's going to throw his business card on the table just in case she ever needs it. And, you know, he was conning her. He was trying to. And the thing is, he's probably not wrong about his assessment of Joe. But if he's not wrong about his assessment of Joe, it's because Joe learned from him. So Cam really can't believe the source. Should she be taking a warning here? Maybe, but she shouldn't be listening to his dad either. So it's not don't trust this narrator. And, you know, there's nothing else for Joe's dad to accomplish here if he can't get through to Cam. I mean, I feel like he was very specifically trying to angle this conversation and he failed, and mission over. So we're going to go back to a scene with Donna in the Clark garage. There's a keyboard that's been set up there with headphones so that only Donna can hear when she wants to play, which seems like a very specific thing because we've seen Gordon turn off her music before. He doesn't want to hear classical. So she's going to be playing and listening to what she's playing silently through her headphones. What she's playing is Fantasy Impromptu in C sharp minor, and it's a Chopin song. And we're going to see her from behind the keyboard, sort of front on. We can't see her playing yet. We're going to get a close-up on her face. She's really lost in her own world as she plays this classical music. And then the camera angle switches to behind her as we watch her play. And we see Gordon move through the frame, but he doesn't interrupt her. He doesn't let her know that he's there. He just sees that she's playing and he leaves. He doesn't engage with her when she's in this world. Okay, we're going to go back to the hotel. And it turns out that this is the hotel where both his father is and the hotel where the reps from Kozoku are. So we're going to first see him interact with the two gentlemen from Japan who are probably on their way to the airport to leave. They're waiting for a car to come for them. Joe's going to pull up and he's going to start apologizing to them profusely. He's sorry for offending them. He's apologizing on Gordon's behalf. Gordon was too ashamed to be here. And Joe makes a whole speech that he wouldn't be where he is today if not for his father. So this is going to be intercut with scenes of Joe's dad reading the article about Joe, which he stole from Joe's apartment. That was in Joe's apartment. He took it. He is reading it in the lobby of the hotel, which seems like, oh, that's lovely, right? Hold on a minute for that. Joe's still telling the story of his father. I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for my dad. My dad brought me into his company, IBM. He taught me everything. He taught me to swing for the fences, literally. He says, I'll do anything to make you reconsider. I'll do anything to encourage you to work with us. We're now going to see his dad. He's finished with the article. He drops the magazine, Joe's property, on a table in the lobby of the hotel. He gets up and he walks out the door. And somebody who works in the hotel chases him and says, excuse me, sir, you left this on the table. And he says, I'm done with that. Ouch. He's done with Joe. Okay. He's done with Joe. So we're going to see Joe's dad leave. He walks down the steps out the front of the hotel and we see him pass the two gentlemen from Kozoku. Was this right before Joe showed up? Was it right after? I think it's probably right before. So I think Joe just missed his dad. And now we're going to go back to the office because while Cam doesn't trust Joe's dad, and while she doesn't particularly trust Joe, she did just get some really relevant information about how would Joe handle my demotion if it were Joe. So she's going to go ahead and use Joe's tricks on Joe. And she goes into the office. She sees Steve putting up a poster. I had to look this up because I wasn't familiar with it. The poster is from, I think it's a show called The Greatest American Hero, which starred William Catt as Ralph Hinckley, who was a school teacher who finds a suit that gives him superhero powers. That feels like something Steve would be putting up in his office, doesn't it? So Steve's putting this up. Cam's like, don't bother. You're fired. Steve's like, wait. I don't think you can. I'm your boss. You can't do that. It's like so disarming, but he's so caught off guard. He doesn't even know what to do with himself. So he was like, I'm your boss. Cam is going to walk from his office to the coffee station where she finds Joe. And she says, so question, do you want to have all of your software programmed in 11 weeks for half of what you're currently spending? Joe's like, probably, yeah. She says, okay, so here's the deal. It's from Brooks Law. It's from, a book called The Mythical Man Month. It's the one thing that I enjoyed reading in college. Adding programmers to speed up a project only slows it down. Steve's going to come up because he's a little alarmed now. He's on red alert. He's like, this woman has an attitude problem. Cam says to Joe, I'm taking over Steve's job. That's what's happening. Joe says she's got his attention. She's come in from the right direction. Joe says, how would you even know which programmers to let go? Do you even know their names? I mean, look, Steve has a whole whiteboard. He's got a whole chart. People have been checking their names off. He knows who they are. Cam is going to disrupt the entire office. She shouts out to all the coder monkeys to come here. She says, how many of you got sucked into the game Adventure last night? And most of them raise their hand. Steve's like, see, she's disrupting things. Cam's like, bah. She says, how many of you figured out what order to push the buttons in at the dam? And a few hands go down. And then she says, how many of you got out of the cave by breaking the code? 3 people keep their hands up that we see in frame. And that includes Lev and Yo-Yo, by the way. She says, which back doors did you use? And so, we see Lev and Yo-Yo saying, well, Zizzy, Plover, Plu. I found Zizzy when I was playing. I don't know a thing about those other ones. I would not be a coder that she kept. So Cam is like, okay, that answers my questions. Lev, Yo-Yo, and the rest of you guys who cheated, you get to keep your jobs. Hurrah. Everybody else, you're out of here. So Joe is going to say, Cam, explain. This moment felt very like Hercule Poirot, sort of like Agatha Christie, kind of like the detective shares, reveals their secrets. I kind of liked this moment for Cam. It was not the same genre, but I liked that it made me think of that. So Cam is going to explain. She's like, look, if you play an honest game, that's all well and good. And you're good at solving puzzles. But if you really understand code, you need to know how to break it. And I need the guys who broke it and cheated. And so she's like, yeah, I need the people who know Zizzy and Plover and Fee Fi Fo Foo. And you see Lev and Yo-Yo look at each other like, did you see Fee Fi Fo Foo? Like, no, I didn't see it either. It's fine. That's okay. They got the other ones. So Joe's going to let Steve go. He's happy to write a letter of recommendation for him. Looks like the greatest American hero just got fired. So we're going to go back to the kill room where Larry is currently giving a speech to congratulate Gordon. Now, maybe Joe was just inspired by what Cam did, which is really a move he would do. So he was re-inspired by himself. So Larry and all the guys in the kill room are currently congratulating Gordon because Gordon got the screens and they're going to be able to make this thing lighter than it was before. Joe is going to come in to interrupt this celebration. He is going to take all of the credit for getting the LCD screen back because he thinks he did, because he apologized profusely to those folks from Japan earlier today. But he's also going to really get on Gordon for how much he messed it up. And he's not going to shirk on the details. He's going to start revealing all the happenings of the prior evening to the guys on Gordon's team. And Gordon explodes. He's like, Joe, you didn't save a thing. I went to Gary's house last night and I begged him to convince them to reconsider. I put all my pride on the line, risked my family relationship, and I got that deal done. And then Gary got that deal done before you even showed up at the hotel. Would you like Gary's phone number to thank him? He just adds that little dig in there. Joe's going to leave angrily. Joe's pride is so hurt in this episode so many times, and he needs a win, and he's going about it. It just feels like in all the wrong ways. And unfortunately, like, this is just another loss for him. He's not even at the biggest one yet. Gordon is going to let the team go home, and he says he'll figure out the heating problem himself. Joe is going to lick his wounds in a room of the office all by himself, and Cameron sees him in this dark room, just sitting with a little storm cloud over him. She says, are you going to the bowling alley thing? What is this thing? Is it a ball? Is it a bowling alley thing? Is it a radio station funded thing? Is it a car smash event? Is it all of the above? It's like such a hodgepodge of, I don't know, is it like a festival kind of thing? I don't know. But she says, are you going to the bowling alley thing? Some of the coders are going. Joe is just sitting in darkness, and he says, it's amazing what passes for culture in Dallas. He's just so not, like, this is not his day. Joe says, okay, so I saw that you took your stuff from my apartment, which is fine, but you also took, a few things that weren't yours. And while it's very sweet that you wanted the article of me, / Cardiff / just me, it's very, very sweet. But I would like it back. I do need it to send it to potential business partners and retailers. He's not sending that particular magazine to retailers. He wants it for himself. Let's be honest. Cam says, it wasn't me. Your dad came by the apartment and he took it. Joe. So this wasn't for me the first occurrence of little boy face, but it was almost there. Joe gets like a very innocent, far away, wounded look. And Joe says, did you talk to him? Cam says, I didn't stay long. Doesn't quite answer his question. Joe puts his head down. He stares into the distance and he can't even look at Cam. She lingers in the doorway for a little while, saying nothing, observing how far away he looks, and just leaves. Because what do you say to Joe in this moment? I think Joe in this moment is thinking, my dad got to Cam too. He ruins everything. He's ruined Cam. Like, I think he is just like, nothing is safe from my dad. Nothing. That's what it felt like to me anyway. So Cam is going to go, and then we're going to go over to this, I don't know, bowling alley, KCYD radio event, fundraiser, music is whatever this event is. A bunch of people from the office are there. They're all, enjoying the music. The Steve Miller Band's song "Living in the USA" is currently playing. We're going to see the Kill Room guys and Debbie, and Cam is chatting with Lev. So it's a fun event for everybody. And then the host of the event announces that they're about to do a car smash. It's a fundraiser. They have a 1983 Datsun 280ZX for this purpose. $5 a swing. So, and literally $5 a swing. So if you want to just take one swing at it, you pay $5. But if you want multiple swings, you pay more money, and the same person can hit the car a bunch of times. So Boz is going to get up and he's going to smash the car, all in good fun. Everybody's looking on, cheering. And we see Yo-Yo. He sidled up to Cam. Yeah, he's cute. So then Joe is going to walk through the crowd. He comes up. He's looking very serious, very determined. This like fun Boz smashing the car thing, that energy is about to be put to the side, and we're now going to get the angry Joe energy. Joe skips to the front of the line. There are other people who are holding money in their hands, and he just gives the guy $100 bill because he wants a full 20 swings at this car. He removes his suit jacket. He smashes the car with such intensity, and then he gets on top of the car and he is angrily smashing this thing with the sledgehammer. Cam, on the very first hit, is kind of like a little alarmed. It's like, whoa, this guy is intense. But as he continues to smash the car, it turns into a slight smile, and she's fixated on him. I mean, she can't stop watching this. In the middle of him smashing this car, he looks over at her and he sees her staring at him with this little bit of a smile. Okay, he's still got her. And then he keeps going. He still keeps smashing the car. He wants her back. He wants her back. He doesn't want Joe's dad to have ruined his relationship with her. So, so much interesting stuff here. And, I want to make a comment about the Cam and Joe stuff, but we have a couple comments about that I would prefer to say first, and then I'll respond to them. A lot of dad stuff in this episode, and dads are turning out to be not great influences on the whole, but deeply influential nonetheless. Okay, so first, before we get into any commentary, I'll say, like, to start off with, hey, the music. Last time, I think I completely skipped over the music, which is ridiculous because it was in my notes and I just ignored it and skipped right through it. So let's talk about the music from this episode. There wasn't a ton of stuff that was featured that was like, curated specifically for this episode. But the first one was a big one. We had that opening montage with Capsize by Big Black Delta. It was from 2011. I mean, anachronistic, but feels really right. So I do like that song choice, to be honest with you. Then we've got the song that Donna was playing that was playing in her headphones through her keyboard, and that was Fantasy Impromptu in C sharp minor by Chopin. That one was composed in 1834, but you know, it's Donna, it's classical. Doesn't need to be 80s or 90s. We've also got at the car smash / bowling alley / KCYD event, we hear Living in the USA by the Steve Miller Band from 1968. You know, an earlier song makes sense. I mean, we listen to songs from decades earlier all the time. So this felt like a good festival atmosphere sort of a song. Now, favorite quotes. You know, I'm going to give you an honorable mention on this one, but then I'll give you my favorite one as well. So my favorite honorable mention quote, just because it really hit home for me personally after trying to play Colossal Cave Adventure, Buzz saying, "How the hell do I get out of this godforsaken cave?" I felt that in my bones. Been there. Okay, but my favorite quote of the episode feels very indicative of the world that we're in. And it's when Donna's dad says to Gordon, "Joe McMillan, Donna keeps telling me he's all hat and no cattle." Okay, I really like this quote for a few reasons. First of all, this is what Donna thinks about Joe. This is what Donna says about Joe to anybody who will listen. Donna knows exactly who Joe is, or who she thinks he is at this point. And again, she's never gotten any of the benefit of it. So I think like this is her honest assessment of Joe, and it's probably pretty close to what we're supposed to know about Joe at this point. But I also like this idea that it feels like a very Texas expression. It feels like a very South expression, this cowboy, like he's all hat and no cattle. I've never heard that expression before, but I instantly have an idea what it means, because for me, like, what is a cowboy if you only have a hat and you don't actually, you know, like you're kind of missing important features. So he's the guy who can say the sales lingo, but he doesn't really understand the hardware. He's the guy who, you know, he can talk the right terms, but what's underneath it? What, you know, what substance is underneath his language? So I think it's something that a lot of characters are picking up on, and it's, you know, meant to be, it's, you know, as a viewer of this show, this is a confusing time when you think about Joe, because it's like, we've only been seeing this guy who's the salesman, who's all hat and no cattle. And then in this very same episode, we're meant to be getting a lot of compassion for Joe. And also from the last episode, you know, with him being beaten up. So it's the show is really asking us to look at Joe through more than one lens and not make a full judgment on him. It's like, okay, so you thought Joe was a scumbag, but let's just show you some things to kind of mix this up a little bit and see if that confuses you as viewers. And I think it's, for me, it's working. Like, what is Joe? I don't know. I'm still formulating an opinion on that, where I might have started with a more solid one. Okay, so that's my favorite quote. Now we've got some feedback. We've got feedback from a couple people, and it's nice, long, juicy feedback on many different areas. So I'm very excited to dig into this, and I'll probably break it up a few different times to sort of address things. So first of all, I've got a new commenter, and I'm very excited to welcome Frackin' Toaster Lover. Holy moly, what cool stuff this person has been bringing to the table. So let's start with some general notes, but then we've got some really specific things to dig into. So Frackin' Toaster Lova says, "I first heard about the show during the pandemic, and I binged it in summer 2021 over less than 2 weeks. It really gripped me right from the start. It's a rare case of a show and characters I fell in love with immediately, especially Cameron and Joe. Donna, Gordon, and Boz are also great, but these two are the characters I relate to the most, especially when we get to learn their backstories. Lee Pace was incredible, so much charisma and presence, and such an ability to transform himself, and made me captivated from the start, even when I spent the first few episodes wondering if I should love him or hate him. I hear you. Later on, when we learn more about him, it became pure love. And Mackenzie Davis has become my favorite actress in general. Few actors can convey so much raw emotion as she does. I don't know why this show didn't become popular. Bad luck, lack of promotion. But if there was any justice, it would have won a bunch of Emmys and would have been nominated for Best Drama and all 4 acting categories each season, plus writing, directing, casting, cinematography, score, music supervision. Instead, it only got a main title design nomination. A couple of comments about the episode/podcast. I love your comment about Joe as a destroyer and a creator. I think the key word for him is transformation. He destroys and transforms things and himself. This is why the comparison to God Shiva, Shiva the Destroyer, is so fitting. Pause. Frack and Toaster Lover, you're going to come in on your very first comment, and you're going to hit me with Shiva the Destroyer. We're going to be friends, okay? Because this, holy smokes, I didn't know a thing about this. Okay. So I just did some cursory research on this. And here's just for those of us who need a little info about this god. He is the supreme being in Shaivism, one of the major traditions within Hinduism. Shiva is known as the destroyer within the the Hindu trinity, which also includes Brahma and Vishnu. In the Shaiva tradition, Shiva is the supreme lord who creates, protects, and transforms the universe. Creates, protects, and transforms the universe. Shiva is said to be the great destroyer who will annihilate the universe in the end of time, only for it to be reborn as part of the endless cycle of death and rebirth. Many legends speak of Shiva's exploits as a god. Yeah, that tracks. Now, I imagine there's a lot of information out there about this, about the god. And there's probably a lot more I need to dig into, but I think this is going to be a really good reference to have in mind for Joe as the seasons progress. And, you know, already I was kind of hitting on those themes of destruction and creation, and it absolutely feels like that's rolled up into Shiva the Destroyer. So apologies if I'm mispronouncing anything here, but I think this is very, very interesting. Had absolutely no clue this was a comparison that was being made, and I love it. And I hope I can hold this in my mind as we go through future episodes. Now, of course, that's not all the greatness that came from Frack and Toaster Lava. Let me continue with further thoughts. Okay, so another thing I want to point out is notice that Cameron got seduced the moment Joe said, I don't actually work for IBM. I think the mutual attraction was immediate, but she first thought of him as a corporate guy, so the enemy, the man, unacceptable for anti-establishment Cameron. But the moment she learned he wasn't, that he was in fact a grifter, a rebel, her interest skyrocketed. She sees the red flags and she finds them sexy and intriguing. Although you could say the same the other way around, since Cameron also has a lot of issues, and that's one of the things aside from her talent that Joe is drawn to. On the surface, they seem to come from different worlds, but on a deep level, they feel each other's deep emotional damage, ambition, vision, and desire to create something special. Though Cameron is unsure if the rebellious visionary is really there or if Joe is just a greedy con man. All the main characters are messy. Only Diane has it all together, but I feel like Gordon, Donna, and Boz's problems stem from their adult lives. But Cameron and Joe have these deep formative childhood traumas stemming from the loss of one parent and a deeply antagonistic and troubled relationship with the other. So I'm going to hold off on my comments on that because we have a bunch of thoughts from another commenter that also, some of that also includes a bit about Cam and Joe. So I'll address that all at the same time. But I do really like the observations here. What is at the core of their attraction to each other? And for what it's worth, I don't know that I think Diane has it all together. I think she makes mistakes, but she's also the person who's willing to say, made a mistake and we're fixing it, and here's how. And she gets there a lot quicker, I think, than I find her very mature. And I think it's because she might be on the other side of her own drama. And maybe she grew up through it. But these other characters, I think, are sort of in the fire right away in this show, and really having to figure out how to correct their own programming issues, if you will. So more on that in a minute, but I love this comment, and I'm going to circle back to it in a second, because first we have all kinds of really interesting comments from the lovely Evan, who has taken credit for the wonderful Excel spreadsheet revelation from our prior episode. Bunch of different really interesting points here from Evan on both last episode and this one. So regarding season 1, episode 4, Evan noticed, so watching Cameron's anxiety or panic, then when she goes to the roof, she reminds me of Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, thereby reminding me of the blurb I saw online years ago that the name Cameron Howe is a reference to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which was pulled from his first name and the name Howe on the back of his Red Wings jersey. How well is that known, rumor or not? Talk about people noticing things that you never would have picked up on. Look, I can't confirm it, but let's make it canon. If you see it, it's there, right? I mean, I think that's the beauty of interpreting and providing commentary on TV shows and art and film and all of that. If it feels like it's there for you. And I like that it's there for me too now. So that's a really interesting observation. Now, here's one, okay, regarding my thoughts on the last episode about Joe's beating. It's interesting on this 5th watch that I previously didn't deeply reflect on who ordered the beating on Joe, and the beating created a lot of empathy for him with this situation. It was devastating and potentially lethal based on the injuries seen with his shirt off. I'm trying to look at this as a new viewer as much as possible, though it's difficult to do so. If I were a new viewer and up until Joe's beating, I'm thinking Joe is such a narcissistic sociopath and probably thinking John should give Joe a knuckle sandwich. Afterwards, I'm feeling kind of bad for Joe. Also, I'm leaning towards the beating being ordered by Nathan. The walk John does while we hear the rifle shot, ostensibly to the horse, and the walk he does following Joe out of the police department remind me of each other enough to make it feel intentionally mirrored. Ooh. I like that point. I like the detail around the mirroring of the walk. I don't know if it says I just don't want it to be Boz that ordered the beating, but I do think we're seeing a lot of things in that episode to support that it wasn't Boz who ordered it. I mean, I don't necessarily think of Nathan as a guy who would do that either when I think of him across the whole show, but then I don't know why I don't think of him that way. And I mean, in this episode, in episode 4, they specifically made it a point to show him putting a horse out of its misery and like being very clinical about that. So that's what we're meant to know about Nathan at that point. And that's got to be information that we take with us, right? And I think, yeah, this point about Boz having that sort of slow walk of trying to accept the situation, maybe that is meant to be a mirror between the horse and Joe. So I like that comment partially because it supports the theory I'd rather see bear out, but I also think it's very well observed. Okay, so now let's look at, okay, in season 1, episode 5, still from Evan because Evan's so awesome. We witnessed Joe's strained relationship let me start that again. We witnessed Joe Jr. and Joe Sr. strained relationship without seeing them actually interact. Maybe metaphorical. They can't be in the same room together literally, or even maybe a very abstract and speculative thought, as in one person can't be in two different places at once. Like they're so similar, they can't be in close proximity to one another. Like they're going to disrupt the space-time continuum. Kind of goofy, I know. But I see your point, right? Because we haven't seen them in close interaction before. We've only seen sort of the proxy of Joe's dad, which was Dale, from like, the very beginning of the series. And we got a sense of Joe's dad through him. But now that we're seeing Joe's dad in the flesh, actually in operation, it's eerie how much Joe must have learned from his dad, and not all good things, right? Mostly bad. So like, I have yet to see anything that came across as good of the things he picked up from his dad. And, I absolutely see them as like Joe has copied his dad as much as he's run from him in many ways. And I think that's something that he's going to have to really reckon with. He doesn't like that influences in his life, and yet he's living it out every day and with the people around him, and it's gotten him into some trouble here. People don't like it. And so like seeing them together and then seeing the impact of both of them on Cam and seeing how she sees through it but is sort of intrigued by it is all very interesting to me. So I like that point that like, what if you put them in the same room together? Because we will eventually see that. But what would that even be like? Would everything just implode? Okay, now a smaller detail, fun fact. Evan, I don't even know how you spotted this. You can see the One Atlantic Center rooftop through the tree line at the golf course when Gordon and his father-in-law are golfing. Guessing it was shot at Piedmont Park around the Meadow and Midtown Reflection Pond. I used Google Maps to solve which building top matched. Evan, this was barely even visible and you saw it. I went back into the scene and there it was, peeking through the trees. What looks like the One Atlantic Center, which is the IBM tower in Atlanta. So why were they playing golf in Atlanta? Does Donna's parents, do they live in, I thought they lived in Texas. Why were they playing golf in Atlanta? But maybe I missed a detail there, but the fact that there's an IBM tower in the background is very appropriate. And Evan, I don't know how you saw this, but now I'll never unsee it. That was brilliant. That was awesome. And we're not even done yet. So now this is where we're going to tie the Cam and Joe stuff together. Evan says, it was interesting to see Cam get very excited seeing Joe's angry side at the Dotson Sledge Fest, whatever that event was called. I know, Evan. What was that event? Seeing him resonate with that emotion, like she's safe to have that be a part of her too, the anger. Like he can get her. Like most people can't accept her, a woman having that emotion. They expect a nice girl to meet the societal norm. I don't know. It's just a speculation at the possible depth of feeling. I think there is a lot to what is the attraction between Cam and Joe. And I think the comments that we've had from Frack and Toastalova and from Evan, I'm on the same page with you. They both recognize the damage in each other. We don't know as much yet about Cam's background, although we certainly got a lot more information in this episode. But I think it's clear that it's there. And it's clear that they've found ways to mask it and cope in the everyday world that don't really make them great humans to interact with other humans, but have gotten them by this far, right? And they're easily able to spot it in each other. And I think it draws them to each other. It also makes me want to say to both of them, maybe don't do this. Just go work on yourselves somehow, like work on this, because it doesn't feel like this is going to be a healthy relationship for either of them from where they are right now. I mean, how could it be? But also they're drawn to each other. What can you say? So like how do you make that unhappen? I just don't know that you do. I mean, this idea that Cam, we're seeing the look that she's giving as Joe's very angrily smashing this car and his father, basically. um, like she is smiling through that. When Cam tells Joe, I've got you, I see through you, he's like, oh, is that so? And she sticks with it. And that makes him okay with her. Like he knows that she sees through him and that makes it safe for him to be around her. So there's like a safety in knowing that they both see the damage and have been choosing to stick with whatever this thing is that they're doing. Um, you know, I'm so tempted to give all these spoilers for things that are ahead and other people that we're going to meet, but I won't do that. And I'll just say, in this episode, Cam starts to make choices that feel like she's emulating Joe. And we see her at the window, looking at the window, not out the window, in her underwear, emulating Joe. And we see her fire Steve, emulating what she's heard about Joe. And is she going to continue to head in that direction? I don't know. We're going to have to see, right? But she knows that the things that Joe does are so sketchy, but she's picking up on them and they're kind of working. So, what does that mean? And when Joe sees that she's doing that, will that reinforce him? So I don't know. I think their relationship is so interesting from the stuff that we're seeing here. And there's gonna be evolution. And I can see from what Frack and Toaster Lover was saying that like I think both of us recognize that like it's hard to love Joe right now in the early stages of the show. And yet we're also creating these moments of empathy and these moments of understanding where he's coming from. And every character is getting to be more and more complete. So I don't know. I'm excited by how they've been setting this up so far. And I'm really interested to see where they take it from here. And goodness, there's so much to say about these episodes. Thank you to everybody who's commenting. What a blast to hear from other humans on observations that they're making. And this is stuff that I've never, ever thought about or considered. And now I can. So I hope everybody is learning some new things. And we've got a really fun interview coming up later this week that's going to have some other cool details to share as well. So everybody keep watching and enjoy it. And if you ever want to comment on these videos, feel free to go into the comment section here on YouTube. And if you have a spoiler in your comment, just start with spoiler and let us know that so we can be aware. If you want to tell us what season or episode you might be spoiling, that may help too. But what fun to be able to talk with you all about this show. And I can't wait to get into the next one with you. And in the meantime, enjoy Halt and Catch Fire. Bye.